Hello and welcome in this tutorial on how to use the financial statement analysis with 2 years time frame. So when you go in the inputs tab, you will see that there are different sections that you can expand by clicking on the small plus button. So for example, you can select the years that you want to analyze, the 2 years. If you want to analyze more years, we provide another template where you can analyze up to 5 years. So go check it out. Then scrolling down, you can see the balance sheet and the income statement sections where you can expand the different sections. So we will ask you to categorize all the elements that you find in the financial statements of the company that you want to analyze across several categories like operating asset short-term, operating liabilities short-term, and then operating asset and liabilities long-term, and then financial liabilities and asset short-term and long-term. So there are some items that we have already added here, so you don't need to change them, and you will need to add the relative values here. So for example, for accounts receivables, for inventories, for accounts payables, and for cash. For the other inputs, you will need to add all the stuff that you find in the financial statement of the target company that you want to analyze together with the value that is reported there. And you will need to categorize them across the categories that we have mentioned earlier, right? So in this case here, you will need to add all the operating assets short-term, here operating liabilities, and so on. Then scrolling down, also the equity, the shareholders' equity here. Then you will see the resulting metrics, so that we calculate the net working capital, net fixed asset, invested capital, and then net financial obligations, short-term and long-term, together with a check that will tell you whether you have categorized properly everything, because if the check will be false, it means that you have added, for example, a financial liability long-term, I don't know, in another place, right? So maybe you have added it here under financial asset, but in reality it was a financial liability. So if you see something like false here, then you know that you need to check it again, right? So for example, if by mistake you added 354 instead of 355, then it will tell you false, because in this case, basically, total assets won't equal liabilities plus equity. And the reclassification that we do in this financial statement, the check won't work. So how can you know how to categorize a certain item under the different categories? So you need to make a distinction between operating asset and liabilities, of course, short-term and long-term, and financial asset. Operating assets and liabilities are those assets that are part of the core business of the company, while financial assets might be something like cash, short-term financial assets, other current financial assets, and so on. Those it is usually easy to categorize these items by checking the financial statements of the company. But we have added in the classification of items tab some guidance. So we have added the most common financial items that you can find in the financial statements of listed companies, and how they should be categorized, right? So if, for example, in the financial statements of your target company, you find something called equity method investment, then you know it's a financial asset. If you find something like a goodwill, then it's an operating asset. If you find something like operating liabilities, then of course it's operating liability. If you find something like deferred tax liabilities, you know it's an operating liability, and so on. Then the next tab is the dashboard numbers, where you can find basically the results of the financial statement analysis, right? So we calculate different ratios, several ratios across 4 categories: efficiency ratio with working capital turnover, working capital ratio, asset turnover, and so on; profitability ratios, return on equity, return on sales, EBITDA margin, EBIT, and so on; liquidity ratio, current ratio, quick ratio, and cash ratio; and solvency ratio with the interest coverage ratio, debt to capital, and debt to equity ratio. And then in the following tab, the charts, you will find the same ratios that we have seen here, but with charts. So you just need to click on the section that you want to expand, or just click on the small 2 here. This will expand everything, and you will find the charts of the ratios that we found here. Again, if you need more years, we provide another template for up to 5 years, so go check it out.